Hi, folks. Welcome to episode 42 of my podcast. It's my great pleasure today to have someone I met through podcasting. Yeah, that's one of the biggest benefits of doing these things that you come across amazing people like that you wouldn't if you um, haven't put yourself out there and in touch with others and trying to listen insights from people that you wouldn't bump unless you would be in this sphere. So I'm delighted with that, and I want to share this with the audience. As one of the biggest benefits from being a podcaster is that you meet people, and that's what we are here for: is to learn, to share experiences, to develop ourselves. And one of the best ways to do that is through interaction. So I want to share my gratitude for what I've been given from doing this podcast. So the person I met along the way is Lorenzo Cianti. He's an Italian student of political relations, and he's very keen into the current situation, not only in his own country but all over the world. And I've been in other platforms with him, and I have to say, his verbal skills are outstanding. Like you'll be impressed. I mean, I told him this many times. I have to say it again. And because I enjoyed so much being with him in other platforms, I said I need to bring him to my own show and make sure that my viewers can also benefit from listening to him. So we will talk mostly about the libertarian movement, if we can call it that way, see what are the prospects from next year. And I think that's a great avenue to start the conversation. So I'm going to bring him to the studio. Lorenzo, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for hosting me.
It's a fantastic pleasure. I mean, you've been in the screen many times. This is nothing new, but the first time you were in my show, it was about time. We've been trying to set it up to this for maybe a month, but we all have schedules and we need to accommodate. But here we are. So I'm delighted that it's now Rio. So you seem to be someone very attentive to what's happening in the world. You really care. You are genuine about following what's going on, trying to understand, not just reading stuff and echoing, but trying to come up with your own conclusions. Why do you think you are like that? Is it something that you were born with, or there was an event that triggered that behavior?
Well, I don't know. Probably it's a talent I was born with. I always find a very deep sense of curiosity in what I'm doing. Since the earliest age, I was even reading geography books when I was barely 3 years old. So I developed several skills, for instance, the capacity to interact with other people, so a kind of interpersonal intelligence, and also a different talent from many other people, that is to analyze what I'm living, the current situation in the world, to come up with original ideas. So I think that if I'm talented from one side, I also contributed to know different things, to study a lot, to make a lot of sacrifices, but they are producing something good. So I think that's the interaction of different elements that combine to each other and makes the person I am now right now. So yeah, I will say that if I'm not studying, I won't be so prepared in the political stuff on the other topics I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a great combo. It's not
Yeah.
the intellectual thing, but also the practical aspect that you bring to the table. So I think it's really a fantastic way to approach life, and I'm delighted to see that you also seem to admire figures that most people don't even know these days. And I want to say just two. One is Margaret Thatcher, and another one is Ronald Reagan. Now,
Yeah.
I know them enough well, but there is a generation gap between us, and I wouldn't say that people in your generation are very much into them. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to be amended here. But how did you get into them, and what did you learn from following those two and other that you might want to share?
Well, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan embodied the best of the 80s, the roaring 80s, an age in which freedom was in the rise worldwide. Individual liberty was promoted by these two influential figures of the conservative field, which helped managing a very difficult situation when many people thought that the Western civilization was decaying. They demonstrated many analysts were wrong and also helped to make the West stronger than ever, richer than ever thanks to free markets and free trade, and constructed a very important political platform that unites both the traditionalists' values and also libertarian principles, the principle I love the most. This very special union between tradition and innovation, between the heritage of the past and the stimulus of the future, made a great combo that is still influential today. I'd like to answer you by telling that, yeah, many people are not aware of the importance of these two historical figures, but many young people from my generation are awaking and are realizing that Thatcherite political belief and also the Reaganite political beliefs are great and can be the right way to interact with other different cultures. They know that they symbolized the best of the right wing. There are several currents of thoughts in the so-called conservative world. I don't like right wing populism, for instance. I believe that we must solve problems coherently and not making claims. Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan were deep connoisseurs of economics. They managed to restore law and order. That's another important aspect. And they built a sense of society that was transmitted even in the next generation. The left-wing movements were ashamed and thought, how can we win elections without knowing the message of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan? So in the 90s, we saw the uprising of many political figures from the left that tried to assimilate some aspects of the laissez-faire capitalism platform. For example, Tony Blair in the United Kingdom, he was a social democrat, but it was also associated to a different way of doing politics by embracing free markets in order to achieve social equality in his own perspective. Bill Clinton in the United States contributed to fuel and foster economic competitiveness by reclaiming the Reaganite agenda, the so-called Reaganomics. So we are experiencing a revival of Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. In my opinion, every right-wing movement that declared to be this way must be inspired by these important figures. We must not neglect the importance of the President of the United States, the 40th President, and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. They were so influential and extremely important.
Yeah. And I think one way to promote them is to raise people's attention for history and tell them this is the achievements. They really made a change, and things are not that different than they were in the 80s. We are still human beings. We still struggle. We still have things to be sorted. So it's not because we are more technologically developed that we can set aside those figures. So I think studying it's really, really important. So you mentioned that we are not much into right-wing populism, and it seems that these days they call populist every single person that sits on the right. How would you define populism?
Well, there are several definitions of this kind of movement. There is a sort of negative connotation of right-wing populism. Now we will talk about it, and also a more positive aspect related to it. Um, First of all, mainstream media refer to right-wing populists, to whoever doesn't align to politically correct, to the establishment, and there's a very different and heterodox opinion about mainstream topics such as illegal migration, economics, European integration in the case of my own country. So people will come up with different ideas from this stream and try to distinguish themselves as original leaders who are trying to persuade the people of the quality of their own ideas, are often mislabeled as right-wing populists. That's not the way to relate to this phenomena. I don't agree with right-wing populism when this phenomena means a sort of interference of the political force in the life of the individual. When the state tells you what to think, what to do, and even how to spend your money, that's the kind of populism that is worrying me, because it promotes a sort of nationalistic view that doesn't coincide with individual freedom, with economic competitiveness, with the desire for a freer and open society. Right-wing populism, some movements in Europe are opposed to my kind of societal beliefs. There are some movements that are
Can you name
making,
some examples just to illustrate?
yeah,
Uh,
for instance, Alternative für Deutschland in Germany. It was born like a Tea Party movement, and it was in the center right of the political spectrum. But nowadays, it has moved farther to the right. And, it has a kind of chauvinist rhetoric that doesn't please me at all. When they told that, there are big superpower that must control us because we are not decisional capacity. For example, they're very prone to Russia, to Putin's regime. That's
yeah.
not the way to react to the brutal aggression of Ukraine.
Hmm.
And from an economic side, they also try to catch different ideas that are not compatible. For example, if you are for laissez-faire capitalism, you want to reduce bureaucracy and to cut and dismantle the administrative apparatus, you cannot come with the idea of welfare chauvinism, of making more subsidies to national industries and even to your own citizen. If you're for free markets, you must deregulate. You cannot make more subsidies to your industries and so on. So there are some incongruencies in this movement. The Rassemblement National of Marine Le Pen is making significant progresses forward,
Yeah.
and its youngest leader, Jourdan Bardella, is really an interesting figure because it's an example of a new generational perspective. Is very keen on the themes of civil rights, for instance, is not as socialist as Marine Le Pen, and is trying to, rebrand the National Rally as a more modern and moderate party. So it's um, giving a different path from Jean-Marie Le Pen's party, which had held anti-Semitic prejudice. It was strongly opposed to NATO. It was too firmly nationalistic.
Hmm.
There is another side of populism that nobody talks about. My favorite philosopher was the noble father of the American anarcho-capitalism. He's called Murray Rothbard, a libertarian thinker. And back in 1992, he wrote an essay called Right-Wing Populism, but he was thinking about a very different concept. He was not referring to demagoguery, to nationalism. He was ideating a new alliance of center-right movements that wanted to react against the omnipresence of the central government in order to cut taxes, to make people more aware of their importance in their own lives. They sort of created a different way of life. That is Rothbardian right-wing populism. It is strongly related to libertarianism and wants to enhance the power of the individual by reducing or even eliminating coercion from the state. And that's really the opposite of what I previously described. If populists try to refer to a collectivist kind of group, my nation, your nation, my borders, your borders, my culture, their own culture, the populism which was theorized by Rothbard managed to unite libertarians with conservatives and to create a broader alliance to defeat high taxes, high regulations, and the interference of central government. The individual is the only person that is able to know what is good for its own life, to make decision about their mind and their own body without the arbitrary interference of others. That's the meaning of Rothbard's message.
Yeah, I think it's very. I think you put it very, very, very well. Yeah, very well. When it comes to libertarianism, because I think it's not that known like other political views of the world. So it needs to be out there for people. We are having a good audience, I just want to say. So let me just encourage people to subscribe to my channel. If you are enjoying my conversation with Lorenzo, stay around. We'll be here for another 45 minutes. I have several conversations in this manner, straightforward, open-minded in the right sense of the word every week. So please subscribe and you'll be notified of what's going to happen in the next few weeks. And if you know someone who's not watching, share. That's the way to spread the word. Where does Donald Trump new administration sits in this right-wing scheme of things, in your opinion?
I think that Donald Trump has made a miracle. He made it real, and he even sort of brought to life what Rothbard wrote back in the 90s. So he even created a broad coalition which unites different sensitivities. I was quite suspicious at first because I thought, well, non-interventionist libertarians like me cannot be together with neocons. Moderates are not along with traditionalist conservatives close to the evangelical world. Instead, Donald Trump, thanks to his unstoppable leadership, to his steady charisma, managed to make it possible. So I would think that Donald Trump epitomizes the best the right can offer nowadays. He involved people who were disaffected by mainstream politics, the so-called low propensity voters, like the blue collars living in the Rust Belt. They were disillusioned. They were really worried about their own future. And Donald Trump reassured them by talking about everyday things like inflation, the risk of becoming poor, no tax on tips, the famous proposal for people who worked in restaurants. So it talked about reality, and concretiveness is the things that separates conservatives from the so-called progressives. What are the main topics of Kamala Harris' agenda? The so-called promotion of gender equality, which doesn't exist, and it's a very dangerous concept in my own perspective. I will explain it later. LGBTQ rights that doesn't make any sense, basically. And the risk of democracy. Donald Trump is a danger to democracy. He will dismantle the way we live. He's against our freedoms. She reiterated meaningless slogans in a sort of abstract word which doesn't correspond to reality. If Donald Trump won, it's thanks to his agenda and to the ability of making inroads with new demographics. Did you know that Latinos are siding with Donald Trump at
Yeah.
extraordinary numbers? The Latino population is divided into a 50% that supports Donald Trump and another 50% with Kamala Harris. So that means that the false claim of Donald Trump as a leader was xenophobic prejudice, hates the Poles, and it doesn't like immigrants is totally a hoax because Donald Trump gain support from African Americans, for example, from Latinos, as I was saying, from Asians, from Indian Americans, from many demographics. That's the way the right should behave. The right should not discriminate basing on the societal condition or of the ethnical origin. The right should be inclusive, should promote freedom for everybody independently from its own history. And that's what Donald Trump is doing right now. He's not a libertarian 100%. I don't agree with his economic policy when he talks about raising tariffs, but I understand his point, and he's right, because the economic crisis made by China is making really difficult times for American enterprise. And raising tariffs was done by the European Union. When the European Union raised taxes, nobody talks about it. There is a general silence. And, the so called experts praise the European Union for doing basically nothing. Donald Trump wants equity, the so called free and fair trade. So he wants to raise tariffs to whoever doesn't respect the American standards of commerce. So, despite not agreeing with everything he says, I think he has a clear, clear logic and it will make America great again. Libertarians now are siding with Donald Trump, so I'm doing.
Yeah, it seems that we are back to basics because the tangible stuff has been neglected for some time, and people have been busy with things that are irrelevant, like pronouns, for instance. Like, all that matters is how you address a person. Well, there's a point to that because you have to respect the person you are talking to, but I don't think pronouns will make a huge difference. There are other things that are more vital when it comes to ethics than trying to guess what is a person's gender and what he wants to be addressed. It's just for the optics. I think the left run out of topics to be popular. They have to invent things, and they were they were trendy for some time, but like other things, they end up in vacuum, and that's probably the reason why Trump got elected.
Yeah, I agree with you. And let me talk about the libertarian influence in Donald Trump's cabinet. Some names he picked up are quite significant because, in my word, they are associated to a backlash, to a new generation, to a sort of revolution in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump promised to drain the swamp, and this kind of rhetorics really pleases me because it refers to the desire to dismantle bureaucracy, to smash down regulation. And what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to do with the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, it's exactly like the thing Javier Milei is doing in Argentina. He has cut down taxes, and the most important things, he has created a minister for the deregulation and the transformation of the state in order to close useless agencies and to foster economic liberty, to attract foreign investments, to make Argentina a country with a dollarized economy. So Donald Trump is drawing inspiration from the government of Javier Milei in Argentina. Another name I liked a lot for example, is that of R.F. Kennedy. R.F. Kennedy comes from the left. Um, is not the kind of libertarian I usually think about, but has promoted some core principles that are dear to me and to other libertarians, like anti-prohibitionism, the war of drugs as doing really harmful effects on the population, undermining the most vulnerable ones by the, having a little amount of soft drugs. That's not the way to combat narco traffic. So he said that instead of using pharmaceutical medicines and antibiotics, the health department should promote the use of new alternative medicines like CBD, cannabis oil, and um, you know um, giving a new perspective on the use of medicine is another thing that many libertarians praise, because the dogmatism of a state that prescribes you drugs and tells you what to do with your own body is incompatible with freedom. When people are free to choose independently from what the other says, they can do more aware decisions about their own life. I don't like cannabis, just to be clear. But if a person is in its room, he wants to make use of a small amount of cannabis without harming anybody else, without driving a car, I cannot do nothing but say, well, do whatever you want, unless you are not harming any other people. That's a libertarian principle. You are free to do whatever you want. The use of medicines, the ability to think critically and to unbias the fake news we are giving every day by mainstream medias are two core principles of libertarianism. Free speech is under attack, and Donald Trump can restore the ability to talk freely about even the most dangerous topics. We must be aware of what is happening, and being the people who are talking freely and who are managing to make our own source of information thanks to X, for instance, it's a very important goal for us. Elon Musk has made a revolution from a communicative point of view, because his media conveys various sources of information that can manage common people like me, to know what is happening, and to think critically about politics, about the role of state in the citizen's life, and even about wars. We were told that wars was a strategy to create freedom in other parts of the world, and the principle of nation building, the so-called exporting democracy model, was praised by many analysts as a way to guarantee the development of civil rights in Africa and Asia. It doesn't work like that. The opposition of many people to the never-ending wars is another phenomena that needs to be focused on. People are not believing anymore in state propaganda. Many people are awakening right now and think that we must stop giving foreign aid to countries that are financing their own pensions and are depriving us on the ability to decide about our own economy. Some countries I won't mention here are trying to make a third world war. We don't want that. And Donald Trump knows exactly what he's doing. His foreign policy is imbued with realism and pragmatism. He's not a neocon and will stop the wars both in the Middle East and Ukraine, because people are tired of being tyrannized by a state that imposes them to give their own money to people they even don't know about.
Yeah. Um, Talking of the American influence and how they export their views, ideals, ways of living, do you believe, or do you anticipate a shift in the political future of Europe after Donald Trump gets into the White House in January, and we can see the benefits of his, of his measures?
I think that Donald Trump's election will be highly beneficial to European countries, but Europe must awake and realize the time the United States generously give money to Europe in order to apply to its defensive abilities is over. Now Europe must defend autonomously, must take the road of self-responsibility in order to prevent external aggression like the one we saw in 2022, the brutal aggression of Ukraine. Europe must realize that the solution is not a central army to defeat enemies, but a new cooperation and a wider support for NATO, because NATO alliance is the guarantee for Europe to survive. A central army is not the solution for the European countries, but many collectivistic politicians, like the recently newly elected Ursula von der Leyen, the chief of the European Commission, are trying to push to a dangerous direction by saying European countries must not decide on their own about the strategies they want to pursue. They must be cooperating in a centralized authority to decide as a single mind their own opinion. Why should a Brussels bureaucrat impose me what to do with my internal affairs or even with my foreign policy? We are different states, 27 states with vastly different histories, legal backgrounds, cultural features. Why must be united in a sort of um, soulless bureaucratic organism like the European Union? In my opinion, Europe doesn't know what to do because, as many scholars said, while the United States innovates, China replicates, the European Union regulates. They have
Mhm.
not any inventive capacity anymore. There is that kind of common idea of social market economy, a sort of model that bonds together social equality and free markets, but it failed miserably because we are experiencing a demographic decline. There are a very few children born in Europe. The rate of birth is under the natural salt of reparation. So the way we finance our pensions, our public health system won't be effective anymore because of the many conjunctural effects we are seeing right now. The United States instead plays a key model, a key role in shaping the destiny of the Western world. It is still a dynamic society which encourages a sort of entrepreneurial spirit. The American dream is based on the creativity of free individuals who decide about their own life and pursue their own egoistic interests. Europe instead has criminalized richness. The more a person is rich, the more is taxed.
Yeah.
So if Donald Trump manages to, you know, tell Europe to wake up and to act like an adult political subject, not like a child or a toddler, things might change by the European Union, uh, uh, as a very collectivist identity. We cannot improve if we have a centralized authority that has the shape of a leviathan that controls our life, our productive activities. I want to ban fossil fuels, for instance. What we are doing, we are literally scapegoating our productive activities in order to make China richer, more competitive, and even more aggressive towards us.
Yeah. Everywhere I lived, I lived in 5 different countries in Europe, and there's one thing that was common, that if you would be successful, if you would be doing well in your field, in your life in general, it doesn't matter what aspect it is, but let's say if you are thriving, you tend to be seen as a son of a bitch, which is wrong, because you can still be a son of a bitch and and make things happen. There are people who are not ethical, and they don't mind when it comes to make sure that they attain what they want. But not everyone is like that. There are people who succeed and are still moral about the others and the community. Have you experienced that in Italy, that if you are somehow above the average, you're going to be targeted?
Yeah, there is a lot of social envy here for a very simple reason, because Italy hosted the biggest communist party of the Western world from the 40s then until the 90s. We had a communist party that hegemonized the left wing field, got between 30 and 35% of votes in general elections, and targeted the most well being, creative individuals to promote a society based on resentment, on envy, on negative feelings against them. One of the main problems of my own country is our own constitution. While the Constitution of the United States of America is based on classical liberalism, on the principle of self government, on federalism as a means to avoid the risk of a tyranny, Italy has a very different constitution that is characterized by communistic and left-wing Catholics' beliefs. And that's a potentially dangerous union. For example, private property, according to Article 57 of my constitution, isn't valued as a supreme principle. It can be denied in some cases for the so-called social profit, for the idea of a commonwealth. What what the hell is that? Such a crazy idea. So if some people are the owner of a house, but the police officers believe that there is a misuse of that apartment, it may be expropriated for a bigger wealth. Yeah, it doesn't sound logic to me, and in every other country it will be seen as a tyrannical thing to do. Italy doesn't believe in the power of free people. And we are told since the early stage that we are the citizens of a republic and we are the protagonists of the political scenario. We can decide about our destiny by doing laws, participating to a general election, making the difference in everyday activities. That's not the way, because our political establishment considers the population as submitted individuals, not of capable thinkers. A very interesting thing is represented by the electoral system. I'm very passionate about electoral system because they literally explain how the political class regards the common people. The United Kingdom, as a majority system, there are many electoral constituencies where the politicians must be known to the public, must live there, must be active, and I would even say proactive in providing services for its own community. When politicians fail to do that objectives, they are defeated in the general elections. That's a way to respect the will of the people. Italy instead has a mixed electoral system, a bit of proportional, a bit of majority system, and you know the way politicians are selected to represent a territory, they are chosen by secretary of a single party. For example, we have a candidate that is elected in a territory that barely knows him because the secretary of its own party decided to put him for a sort of internal advantage. So, in my constituency, there is for the Chamber of Deputy our current Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani that doesn't know the territory, is from Rome, but he wants to represent Velletri, the place where I live, and it sounds really strange to me. Uh, why a sort of foreigner should represent my interest in the parliament if barely knows the feature of the place I live in, if it has many economic activities, if it's a depressed territory that needs to be protected by special laws? That's the difference that separates the so-called Commonwealth countries to the European countries. The proportional representation creates chaos and doesn't give governability. On the other hand, the majority system is a strategy that promotes the knowledge of the constituencies, the respect of the people, and even a sort of electoral way to be effective. If in a constituency you get one vote more than your adversary, you win and he loses. Here we are seeing politicians that come from a kind of party, then change their affiliation for meaningless interests. This phenomenon is called transformism, the way a person transforms himself to, appease the public. I woke up as a left winger, the next day I'm a right winger. That's a thing
If you
that
can change
happens
gender,
just immediately.
why not
Now,
change political party? No, so
they are change not only their political party but the way they think. If they think, I suppose they are not thinking anymore. You know, Italy must restore the trust in politics, but in my opinion the best way to trust in politics is to reduce the size and the scope of government, because government are becoming too big, too present, too heavy, and they are undermining the freedom of us individuals. That's the spirit that imbues the American Constitution. We don't have that kind of constitution. We must change our mentality.
yeah, you seem very critical of the
Yeah,
system, and your views are
yeah.
not exactly aligned with the mainstream or with the current trends. On a personal level, like how do you handle that? Like, because I think most people, they don't have a clue. They just go with whatever is on the news, and you all struggle. So, how do you approach being that different from the majority, and what would be your advice for someone who is in your shoes and doesn't know what to do with themselves on a personal level?
I try to raise awareness about my way to see the world. I don't want to make politics on a personal level because I see it as an aggressive threat to other people. I don't want to dictate rules over my fellow citizens. I don't want to tell them what to think, what to do, how to behave. No, that's not the way I'm interested to make the difference. I want to influence people, but by making them think about how the government has spoiled our life and ability to be creative, to be free and original. The more the government grows, the less we decide. Ronald Reagan wisely said that a big government cannot be for the little man. He was right. So I try to write as many articles as I can in which I share my ideas. I talk about libertarianism, but not in a sort of too much theoretical of auto-referential way. I want to make this principle thought, understood, and to make them resound by proposing them in a simple yet effective way. I want my ideas to be as known as possible and to spread them the way Javier Milei is doing in Argentina. I don't want to make difficult lessons about how to eliminate coercion or how to abolish federal agencies. I want to talk about the reality we are experiencing with a critical point of view and giving seeds of new, fresh ideas in a different path, the path of freedom. Friedrich von Hayek, back in the 50s, after the end of the Second World War, wrote an interesting essay called The Road to Serfdom. I wrote a text about this important book, and I even won the School of Classical Liberalism talking about Friedrich von Hayek philosophy. Hayek told that there isn't an halfway between freedom and tyranny, despotism. There isn't such a thing as a mixed economy that blends together coercion and liberty. There is not such a thing as a functioning democracy if it constricts people to think arbitrarily. There is not a thing as a free society when the political class rules against the will of the majority of the people. So, in my articles, I like to talk about philosophy, about theories, but giving aside about current events, critically analyzing them, and making a difference. I want to be original. I want to propose new stuff. Many people do appreciate the work I am doing, and despite my young age, I'm currently 21 years old, I think I'm making a great experience and a treasure with journalism. I want my ideas to be spread and to propose them freely without um, telling other people you must think exactly the way I think. I love dialogue. I love interacting with different ideas in order to reach not a compromise, but a common view. So I firmly believe in pluralism, in free speech, and the idea that different people can explain themselves freely without accusing each other of being offensive. There is a wide use of this term nowadays. You are offensive to me. You used an offensive language against me. That's not the way to do the difference. Polarization is destroying civil debating. We must again discover the value of free debate, free speech, of articles, of telling the people the truth, without faking out. That's basically what I believe in.
Well, I'll be very keen now to read your articles. So my understanding of it is basic, but I will be very, very interested in reading them. I'm sure they are as articulate as you are when you present yourself in podcast. But I think, as I said in the beginning, your verbal skills are outstanding, and I'm sure your writing is the same way. And another compliment that I will give you, what I mean by words. I'm not just being cute here. Is your English? How can you speak English that well? Because not everyone in Italy, and I don't want to expand my comment here, not to piss off people. Not everyone in Italy speaks that good English. Like, how can you
You're
speak this
right.
well?
Yeah, you're okay. Thank you for being so kind with me tonight. I really appreciate your comments about my fluency and my verbal skills. Well, I have a deep passion for foreign languages since the early stage. I started learning English when I was 4 years old. I was a kindergarten. I attended a private kindergarten, for God's sake. I will talk about private schools lately if you want to. And I sang rhymes, I discovered the basic stuff, colors, words, animals. I was really fascinated by this language. Then at the age of 6 years old, I started studying with private teachers from England. Basically, that's the way my pronunciation sounds. So posh. Many people told me that. And I continued studying English. I started writing in English. I attended many classes. I did many exams from Cambridge Assessment of English. Now I have a C1 certificate that basically means I am at an advanced level of knowledge of this language. And back in 2022, 2 years ago, I decided to make a special holiday visiting Brighton in the United Kingdom. I knew a lot of people coming from all around the world. Some of them are still my friends. That was an extraordinary experience. I met a great teacher that encouraged us to do our best to succeed in life, to reach our dreams, and to keep it up until we go to our goals. She was amazing. And really, I still remember her with much affection. And I remember Brighton for a very peculiar reason. Did you know that Brighton was the city where Margaret Thatcher, in the second year of her government, risked her own life during the explosion of the hotel she was staying in?
I didn't
I
know
even
that.
visited
What
that
I
hotel.
know is that Brighton is the wokest capital of England, is known for that.
Okay, yeah, that's another topic to talk about. Yeah, it was really woke, but
Yeah.
while Italy has a Marxist subculture that is difficult to scratch off, Brighton is woke, but if I think differently from the wokies that are living there, it doesn't make any difference. You can think
Mhm.
freely, and that's very interesting. In
You
Italy,
think it's
let me
culture?
it's a different culture. It's the
Mhm.
culture of individualism, it's the country of free thinking, free speech. We are seeing those values under attack because of Keir Starmer's socialist dictatorship. Yeah. When I visited Brighton, one thing that surprised me is the left-wing approach towards infrastructures, towards public transports. Here in Italy, the environmentalists are against infrastructures and technological innovation because they think that making newer and cleaner roads is a threat to the environment. I don't know why. It seems really senseless. In Brighton, instead, our teacher, that was a progressive but a very intelligent woman, brought us to a museum in which the guides told us a fundamental truth. If we don't promote sustainability by constructing roads, by making new infrastructures, the environment is gonna perish. they show us the images of the bridges that unite the southern part of England and several clean infrastructures. For example, sun energy, wind energy. Uh, in Italy, those systems are highly penalized because leftists think everything is a harm for the environment. They think that man is a threat to the existence of nature. In Britain, they taught us a different version of this story. They taught us that man and nature must convive, that must live together to create a better future. Discovering this thing in a massively left-wing environment surprised me a lot. So I would tell you that the left wing in Britain is 100 times better than the left wing we have here, because here everybody's a socialist in disguise, even conservatives.
Really?
Yeah, because Giorgia Meloni comes from the so-called social right. She's not a libertarian. She's not a conservative in the Western sense of the term. I was hopeful towards her. I thought, yeah, she might be, a steady, firm leader, but she demonstrated to be to be a different leader, to be a left-wing leader in disguise. Because
Are you disappointed with her?
currently, I am disappointed after having supported her because I believed in her words and the idea of a conservative revolution. She's the first female leader in Italy and expressively talked about the idea of conservatism. And nobody in Italy defined itself as a conservative back in the days, because this term was seen badly as a reminiscence to the fascist regime, to Mussolini, that it's a completely different thing, naturally, because Mussolini was a socialist and conservatives are on the other side of politics. A famous right-wing writer from the 20th century called Ennio Flaiano quoted, "In Italy, there can be conservatives because there is nothing to preserve." So there is a misconception about conservatism. I talked about this many times also with Gary Craig Paul that I greet right now. Talking about Giorgia Meloni doesn't trust the will of people, and she thinks that the government is like a father that provides services to make the people comfortable. That's not the way to approach. She even taxed the bank's revenues last summer because she thought that banks are exploiting the middle class. The middle class is saving its own interests in banks. So why criminalizing banks? I don't get the point. So you probably will be upset after what I'm saying, but even right-wing parties in Italy have some socialist aspects inside them. They see trade as a threat. They see commerce as an evil to fight, and they doesn't combat the European Union that is really destroying our economy. They try to reach a compromise with Brussels on the most various topics, but the appeasement, the road of consensus, as Margaret Thatcher demonstrated, is not the way to solve problems. The way to solve problems is leadership, the desire to polarize society, to impress a different direction, and to dismantle the idea that everybody should agree on everything because of a sort of constitutional harmony. Left-wing politicians dictate the rule to the right, telling them, you are disrespecting the Constitution. The Constitution talks about equality, about social benefits, about subsidies. If you right-wing parties doesn't align with us and you believe in privatization, just to say one, you are racist. You are against the poorest people. That's a logic that's kind of a Kafkian nightmare to me, because I'm one of the few journalists in Italy to believe in libertarian principles and to see a wide consensus about ethical topics, economy, society, security from the left to the right. We have a uniparty, and a true right-wing politician must do everything it can to defeat this national consensus. We need a Margaret Thatcher. That's the thing. We need a Ronald Reagan. We need a Javier Milei, but nobody has the courage to speak up and change things for the better. We must change. But people don't understand why. Can you tell me why? I can't understand it.
Yeah, I was just thinking of people who contradict themselves. And I just recall that it was like 2 months ago, I was reading an Italian author. Have you heard of Curzio Malaparte, the
Oh, yeah.
Italian?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I read a few of his books, and the last I read was his memoir when he was traveling in Russia and China. And as you probably know, Curzio, for most of his life, he was not exactly Mussolini supporter, but he was leaning towards him. But in his last years, he fell into communism. He went to Russia, China. He said, okay, that's the way. People seem happy. Everyone is well fed. Things are thriving. There are, buildings being built here and there. And it's funny how people switch throughout life. I think to an extent, all of
Yeah.
us, as free thinkers as we are a product of our time. And there's no way we can escape that. Have you reflected about this?
Yeah, I reflected many times. Winston Churchill affirmed that after the armistice in Italy, we had 30 million fascists. The next day, they become immediately communists. That's transformism, the thing I described previously. The ability to think freely is not contemplated in Italy. In Italy, free thinkers were marginalized, and uh, there was a prejudice against those people that thought freely. The best economists of the 20th centuries, like Bruno Leoni, just to name one, moved to the United Kingdom to do research and teach in universities, because Italian universities are full of the 68 philosophy or pseudo philosophy that wants to create division, despair, and confusion. There is not anymore the respect for teachers. Professors aren't seen anymore as an authority, and students, should I say left wing students, are destroying the cultural environments by giving collectivist ideas that are poisoning universities, schools, academies. I had a negative experience. I don't know if I talked about it to you. 2 years ago, I was the first person in my family to embrace university and to enroll to do humanities. I wanted to attend literature lessons in Rome's biggest university. I started with the best intentions ever because I really liked those subjects. I was into Latin. I won several competition of translation. I loved literature. I wrote hundreds of books. My room is full of books. But did you know that in that university, a person like me A libertarian-minded individual cannot study. Rooms were occupied by left-wing collectives, and they even told me, yeah, you cannot study here, go back home. That's
No way.
outrageous. And communist professors, um, it's like if they see everybody and individuated the people that are keener on left-wing ideals and the others who doesn't align. Um, I didn't express politically in the university because I saw that environment as a dangerous place. When I gave exams, left-wing teachers, asked me harsh questions. I was able to answer anyways. They told me I don't have analytical skills. I didn't study enough. I wasn't um, I wasn't suitable for that kind of subjects, and I felt depressed for a while because I was asking myself what I'm doing here. Teachers are trying to put you down and make you think you're born in a wrong way. I don't I don't know what they saw that's dangerous in my face. I'm just a student that wants to study freely to reach the best in life. I changed university the next year. I went to a smaller but much better university and studied a different curriculum, political science and international relationship. I met there one of the most important women of my life, the professor of political philosophy, Modugno. She's an amazing teacher. She introduced me to anarcho-capitalism, to Rothbard theories, and she make me read in Rand novels. That was a revolution to me. It really opened my mind. I wrote their dystopic novels about the state and the dictatorship, like Anthem, for instance. I I was immersed in a different environment, and thanks to her, I'm discovering every day more the beauty of the libertarian thinking, minarchism, anarcho-capitalism, the foundation of a free and fair society. There are some people that make a difference in your life and can influence you a lot. She was one of them. I'm thanking her for her paramount importance in my life and for the academic contributes she gave me. My biggest dream in life is not only to write in journals, but to become a professor of political philosophy in university. Thanks to my professor, maybe one day I could reach that important goal.
Fingers
That's a
crossed.
matter of likewise souls. I
Yeah.
can explain it this way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have the ability. I have no doubt. The verbal skills are there, the knowledge, the enthusiasm, the keen and genuine interest, the willingness to help others, the path to grow, and understand that there are things on the way that you need to deal with that, and you're okay with going forward. I think that's a great combination. So I hope we will succeed. Man, it's already above 1 hour, as I expected. We could be here forever. We could be here for another 10, but just for the sake of time, I want to put into a closure. So I want to wish you all the best in your political science pursuits in journalism. Again, I think you are so articulate in your thinking and the way you express yourself that I think, man, you're going to do great for sure. So, and with that English, you're going to conquer even some English woman's heart as well, using your Italian charm. So,
Who
There's a lot
knows?
to achieve there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probable.
Yeah, maybe we can
Who knows?
find. Yeah, maybe we can find
Yeah,
someone in Brighton and move to England. Who
yeah,
knows?
why not? Maybe I can found a libertarian party there.
Never know. Any final
Yeah,
message you want to share to people just before we wrap up? Any let's say, word of encouragement, just to finalize with a
yeah.
positive vibe, just for someone who wants to be a free thinker, wants to stay that way. There are challenges about it, but he or she,
Yeah,
they believe that's the right way to live. So how would you tell them, go ahead?
the world is turning to a very different direction from the one we saw over the 4 last years. More people have the courage to speak up, to make their voice heard, and to be who they want without any people that interferes in their own lives. The revolution made by Elon Musk made it possible for many free thinkers to express their views without the danger of being censored. So I would encourage you to cultivate your passions, no matter what, to think freely, to engage in interesting discussions, to debate with peers, to build a different society based on the sense of self-ownership, responsibility, respect for the others, and willingness to support the people who are in need. Altruism must be an individual feature. We must not impose altruism like Ayn Rand told us.
Hmm.
Altruism starts from within our hearts, and our hearts addresses who we are and make it possible for us to make progress in life. So follow your heart, but also follow your mind. Be rational without being harsh. Be emotional without being too much passionate. Try to fit in the right balance and unite the pureness of your soul with the rationality and the ability to think critically. Be free, be brave, be foolish, be angry, like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs said. Be
Yeah,
foolish, be
fantastic
angry.
principles. Fantastic principles,
Thank you.
Lorenzo. I would subscribe all of them from A to Z. Talking of subscribing, people out there, don't forget to subscribe my podcast. It's so helpful.
Yeah,
We need to fight the algorithm because we say things here that are not exactly according to the main message. So it's just a favor. I ask people that's all. There's no financial ask. The only thing I'm suggesting is just to subscribe, share, give us a thumbs up. I just want to tell the viewers that we have a new episode next week scheduled for Tuesday. I have here Guy Dazan, who was my guest for the Movember talks. Back then, we only discussed male health, but we started to get into masculinity as such. How is it being prosecuted, and how men are now facing a crisis because there's so much talk down on men that many of us are losing sense of direction. That's something we want to explore on Tuesday. So just a heads up. The other one is Hezgaidazan is based in Israel. Of course, we will expand the Israeli topic, which is something very recurrent in this podcast. We haven't discussed it, Lorenzo, so we'll keep Israel for our part 2. How about
yeah.
that?
I will be very glad to speak about Israel. I love Israel. I have many Jewish friends. They are beautiful people with huge hearts, and they need our support. We must defend our Jewish brothers and sisters in this very difficult moment. Am Israel Chai.
What a beautiful way to close this podcast. So thanks very much, Lorenzo, and we'll be in touch. Take
Yeah,
care, mate. Have a good
thank you
one.
for hosting me. Goodbye.
Bye.